Okay, let's jump right into this. You've crunched the numbers, you've sat down with the planners, and yep, your spreadsheets are perfectly balanced. But in this explainer, we're going to totally put the math aside for a bit. We're diving into a really fascinating and honestly, super often overlooked question. Are we actually psychologically ready for this massive life transition? Because as it turns out, getting the money right, that is really only half the battle.
To kick things off, we need to be brutally honest with ourselves about what's actually motivating us. Think about this. If your job suddenly became, say, 30% less stressful tomorrow, would you still be rushing for the exit? It's a brilliant stress test, right? It forces us to figure out if we're just dealing with acute burnout, like maybe we just need a really long vacation, or if we share a genuine, deep-seated readiness to start a completely new chapter.
And that tension brings us to a core conflict that behavioral economists and psychologists really want us to grasp. It's the whole push versus pull dynamic. Basically, are you retiring from something or retiring to something? The push happens when we're driven by physical exhaustion or we're just trying to escape a toxic environment. But experts warn us, escaping a bad situation without a strong pull, a real desire to explore new horizons or chase long-held passions, that can actually lead to a pretty miserable retirement. You can't just run away, you literally have to be running towards something.
So, we have to ask, what are the concrete pulls waiting for us on day one? We need to define exactly how we're going to transition seamlessly into our passions. It can't just be some vague idea of, oh, I'm just going to relax. Does it mean you're planning a highly specific 30-day slow travel journey through the historic sites of northern China? Or maybe it's dedicating unhurried, totally blocked out weeks to finally catch up with family. Bottom line, we need a compelling reason to jump out of bed when that alarm clock finally stops ringing.
But hey, it's not just about what we gain, is it? It's also about what we lose. We really have to acknowledge the parts of our current routine that we're genuinely going to miss. Honestly, people who love their work often struggle the most right here. I mean, you might actually miss that quiet morning coffee routine before a big presentation, or the thrill of fast-paced problem solving. What about the effortless mental and social stimulation you get from a dynamic workplace? We have to figure out how we are going to replace that kind of stimulation together.
All right, moving on to Section 1. Uncoupling identity from profession.
I want you to imagine this for a second. You're at a dinner party, let's say 6 months after your very last day of work. Someone hands you a drink, gives you a smile, and asks the classic question, so what do you do? What is your honest answer actually going to be? For decades, our self-worth has been so heavily tied to professional validation, to climbing that ladder. We really have to deeply consider if saying I'm retired is going to feel incredibly liberating, or if it's suddenly going to feel like we've lost this crucial piece of ourselves. When the work email closes for good, where does our validation come from?
Look, this psychological loss of a professional identity, it's a massive hurdle. In fact, it's so huge that nearly 60% of Americans say they'd actually consider working in some capacity after retiring. 60%! Let that sink in. They're not going back for the paycheck. They are actively seeking the fulfillment, the structure, and the purpose that work just inherently provides.
So to really succeed in this next phase of life, we have to consciously find a new mission. And yeah, this means doing a bit of emotional excavation. Step 1, we've got to uncover those parts of our personalities that we've kind of put on the back burner just to be successful in our careers. Step 2, we literally have to redefine what a successful day looks like when there isn't a corporate ladder to measure it against anymore. And finally, we need to actively find new purpose. Maybe that's mentoring the next generation, diving headfirst into creative pursuits, or really engaging in community service.
Which brings us to Section 2, navigating the emotional curve.
Because leaving work doesn't just trigger an identity shift, right? We also have an entire emotional curve to navigate. Researchers who track retirees have actually identified a super predictable emotional trajectory here. That first year is what they call the honeymoon phase. It feels amazing, pure freedom. It's like a permanent vacation without the blaring alarm clock. But we have to be ready for what comes next, which is the totally inevitable year 2 dip.
So what exactly happens in year 2? Well, the novelty just kind of wears off. The big bucket list trips you planned for year 1, they're none. And perhaps most jarringly, those work-related social invitations from your old colleagues, they really start to thin out. This can bring on a surprisingly deep sense of loneliness or isolation. Prepping for this dip before it happens is absolutely essential for our long-term well-being and happiness.
Let's head into Section 3, rebuilding our social architecture. When we leave work, we instantly lose this effortless, built-in network of daily interactions. Plus, it drastically changes the whole dynamic at home. I absolutely love this old adage, I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch.
Retiring means we suddenly have to figure out how to share space 24/7. We've got to redivvy the chores and, most importantly, establish some really clear boundaries so we don't completely crowd each other out.
The contrast between our current weekday and our future weekday is honestly staggering. We're going from a highly scheduled life in separate spheres with all these built-in friends to over 2,000 unstructured free hours a year, and we're sharing the exact same space. We need a deliberate plan. We have to purposefully build in alone time and independent projects while also proactively building totally new networks outside the house, like through clubs or volunteering, just so we don't end up isolated.
And that leads us to Section 4, structuring our unstructured time.
Think about it. A standard work week absorbs massive chunks of our time. Not just working, but the commute, preparing for the day, decompressing afterwards. Suddenly, all of that is just given back to us. We really have to figure out a strategy for this newfound freedom. Do we create a loose daily schedule for fitness, mental stimulation, and project time? Or do we just let the days flow completely naturally? It's tricky. We have to balance our profound desire for total freedom with the very fundamental human need for daily structure. Otherwise, we might just lose our momentum entirely.
Lifestyle planners actually conceptualize this time in 3 distinct physical phases. The go-go years, which are full of high energy and active travel. The slow-go years, where stamina decreases a bit and we stay closer to home, and in the no-go years, with minimal physical activity. A major, totally non-financial reason we should seriously consider retiring early is simply to maximize those high-energy go-go years while we still have the physical vitality to fully enjoy them together. Because let's face it, the clock on those specific years is definitely ticking.
So, I want to leave us, and everyone reflecting on this explainer today, with one final provocative question. Fast forward a bit. When the novelty fades, when all the grand tours are over, and it's just a regular, unstructured Tuesday morning 2 years into retirement, what does your perfect day actually look like? Because if you can answer that clearly, well, you just might be ready to take the leap.